Hello everyone, I'm Abhinav Choudhry, an information sciences student from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, and I'm very excited to be presenting our paper at the group conference. Our research on interesting new entities called virtual influencers will interest you as they have gained prominence in recent times, garnering many followers on social media and getting prominent brand endorsements. The most famous of them, Lil Miquela, you can see on the screen, flanked by Blocko and Bermuda, who are also virtual influencers. Influencers exist only in the digital space and not in physical reality. Um, they are classified into different types by us: mimic real humans that are photorealistic, animated humans that are cartoonish, or non humans that might be human like in characteristics but not in appearance. They differ from cartoon characters because cartoon characters are in a fictional space, while virtual influencers interact with the world in the first person. They claim to have agency, but they're actually controlled by creator teams. Examples of a first person view: Lil Miquela being a 19-year-old robot in LA, supporting Black Lives Matter; Ian Guatlish participating in the Tour de France as an athlete; the B influencer wishing us Merry Christmas; and FN Meka celebrating a record achievement. Miquela may be the most featured virtual influencer, being featured by Time magazine as one of the most influential. But virtual influencers were, in some sense, even in the 1930s, with Cynthia the Gaba girl being featured by Life magazine, and virtual bands, YouTubers existing. A magazine, Luiza, had created Lu for brand promotion of their magazine, and she's very popular in Brazil. Here, there is little previous literature on the subject. Different types of virtual influencers were not examined, and very few virtual influencers were really studied. Long-term followers of virtual influencers were never interviewed previously. Third were, what makes online users engage with virtual influencers in social media, and how do online users perceive their interactions with virtual influencers? So we had to compile a list of virtual influencer profiles because we didn't have a list. We did that through database searches online, and then we proceeded to shortlist it and do purposive sampling of followers who demonstrated meaningful engagement with the virtual influencers posts. Then we interviewed them and we analyzed the interviews using grounded theory approach. The virtual influencer profiles using various types of searches on social media, databases, also reading articles, not just in English, but in other languages as well. And we included a lot of details so as to flesh out the profile. We found 147 virtual influencers from 33 countries, posting most commonly in English, hailing most from the United States, but also UK, and 89% of them having been formed after 2017. Though fashion was the most common area of activity for virtual influencers, music also accounted for a quarter of their activities. Um, Art or animation, various types of advocacies, toys and branded merchandise were also important. 7 virtual influencer profiles. We shortlisted 65 by excluding the branded ones and those that were relatively inactive. We looked at the posts and identified followers who left meaningful comments. An example is shown. 350 followers were finally contacted for interview on Instagram. They consented to email and direct message interviews. We also asked them follow-up questions using direct messages. And finally, this data was analyzed using grounded theory approach and thematic analysis. Participants were evenly distributed between genders. The mean age was 22 years. They were from 16 different countries over 6 continents. They were following for at least 19 months, cumulatively following 33 different virtual influencers. Animated humans and mimic real humans were almost equally represented among those following. They usually followed only one influencer. Moving on to findings, we found that the most important factor was really that of content. Participants found virtual influencers to be creative and with unique, entertaining content. Even their advertisements were regarded to be more creative. They felt that their not being human meant that virtual influencers did not have any boundaries as to what they could do. There's a novelty aspect of virtual influencers too that stems from their being virtual and yet being present in our dimension. CGI beings with emotions was novel for users. The curiosity about virtual influencers was a key draw to their engagement because many followers began following them only out of intrigue. Not knowing who the people behind virtual influencers were made the interactions mysterious. It also made people engage more and evoked feelings of being in touch with advanced technology, AI, cybernetic themes. To illustrate the kind of storytelling and human like experiences shared by virtual influencers, you can see on the slide how Lil Miquela is posting about her breakup, Phoenix McEwen posts about pain while climbing the Alps, and John Pork is posing with other people in the water. Found that participants found virtual influencers to be very responsive, and this encouraged a high degree of commenting behavior from them. Visual attractiveness was noted by many of our participants, although this was more true for mimic real humans and for fashion related virtual influencers. Participants felt that virtual influencers were attractive by default and could be made to be perfect. There was even appreciation for the effort to create virtual influencers, considering it art of another kind. We noted that for animated and non-human virtual influencers, music was often an important reason for following, artwork being another. Notably, many of the participants were interested in a very specific content area such as bees, nature, sports, or games, and they followed for that specific content. Participants considered virtual influencers to be existing in alternative reality or virtual worlds. They were curious as to how virtual influencers interacted with the current world, and it was like watching simulated reality, merging the real and the virtual. But this lack of reality also hampered their trust, and consequently, their trust for endorsements of virtual influencers suffered. Although we did find that many of them had made purchases from virtual influencers. Virtual influencers, they believed, could not be trusted for items that they could not use. But they were more trusting their word on technology and digital art. We found that there was generally a positive perception of virtual influencer involvement in promoting awareness. Some virtual influencers were already doing this, and we have some examples on the right. Um, the anonymity of virtual influencers was made participants think that they could speak more freely. This also allowed shy individuals or those that did not have attractive features to create viral content, thus democratizing the field. It also allowed them to avoid getting mobbed and live private lives. There were some concerns as well. Participants mentioned being nervous or scared about the future because of how good virtual influencers were. Some worried about promotion of unrealistic body types because computer graphics could be made to be perfect. These concerns were expressed most commonly for mimic real human virtual influencers. The concern for lack of transparency also existed because there was no idea about the interests behind the account, and this sometimes made them doubt their authenticity while promoting a cause. Found that on the whole, virtual influencers were perceived to be different from traditional influencers and had opportunities to carve their own niche. They have more flexibility regarding content and can do things impossible with humans. Their high degree of responsiveness also appears to be a distinct feature that is much appreciated. The perception of virtual influencers being in virtual worlds interacting with us also has great storytelling potential that can be utilized for tech, art, game, and science themes, but also for generating awareness and supporting good causes. The limited information about virtual influencers appears to be generating curiosity, but it might reduce as it becomes mainstream, and there is the risk of influencer fatigue. The anonymity afforded by virtual influencers has a democratizing effect that could be used to create content by more creators. Also for virtual influencers. They suffer from even greater trust issues than humans due to their being digital beings. They generate concerns about their ontological nature and make even followers nervous and scared about what technology might achieve in the future. These followers are aware that the beings are artificially generated and thus have no intrinsic agency. Thus, there is a risk that the effectiveness of virtual influencers may wear off with novelty. The uncanny valley is also a risk for mimic real human influencers, but animated humans and non-human virtual influencers might have more comfort, which might make them more appropriate for use when seeking inclusiveness. Of limitations, email and direct message interviews offer fewer effective cues. Choosing just Instagram meant that we missed out on followers from other social media handles. Um, Results may not be generalizable to non-English speaking cultures, and as the interviews were in English, some of the non-native speakers may not have expressed themselves that well. So team, thank you for listening to our research talk. Hope you enjoyed it.